Hi, this is Erica Merrill, and I am the founder of Perfect Legal Video. I am very excited to have with us this week Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee. She owns a family law firm out in Worcester, Massachusetts. She's amazing at what she does, and we are very lucky that she comes quite often to the show to discuss different family law matters. And today we're talking about QDROs. And I just want to thank you again for joining the show today, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So tell us, what is a QDRO?
A QDRO is a qualified domestic relations order. It's something that you're going to get when you're going through a divorce and you have certain assets.
So then I've also heard the term DRO, which I'd just like to say DRO, but I know that's not what people do. What is that?
It is just like a QDRO, except it's not qualified. So it's a domestic relations order. So it's very similar in nature. It just goes to certain documentation, certain types of assets are only going to be DROs versus a QDRO.
So when is a QDRO required?
A QDRO is going to be required when you're going to divide certain assets in a divorce. So, for example, you have any type of retirement accounts, whether it be a 401k, an IRA, an annuity, a pension, stuff of that nature that are sort of intangible. But there's these retirement accounts and you want to divide those. In a divorce proceeding, you're allowed to divide those without tax ramifications.
So why would we want one? I mean, I'm assuming because you want things done correctly, but you've always got the best answers.
Well, definitely you want to make sure you do it by a QDRO, because if you're doing certain things, so say you want half of your husband's retirement account or his 401k account, you can certainly divide that 401k, but how are you going to divide it? You're going to liquidate it and then give it to your wife, and then your wife is going to put it in an account, and now the IRS is going to go, great, huh? You guys owe me money. So you don't want to do that. You want to do it as through a qualified domestic relations order. What that does is it basically says, hey, government, you cannot tax this money. We're transferring it from one spouse to another spouse, and you don't get to touch it. Now, granted, once that person receives it and then liquidates it or uses it, that's going to be the taxing event. But between the two spouses, there's not going to be a taxing event, which is why it's so important to do it by way of a QDRO.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it can save you tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in the long run.
Absolutely. And you want to make sure that you say that. Obviously, the bigger the retirement or the account is, the more you're going to end up saving, because Uncle Sam's going to have their hand out otherwise.
So what's the process? Do we have certain individuals that are qualified to do this, or can any accountant help you out?
Great question. First and foremost, you're going to need to get it in writing in your separation agreement. So your separation agreement is going to say, husband is going to convey to wife 50% of his annuity. That's going to be the example. So then we have to get that approved by the court. The court's going to approve your divorce. We then hire somebody. It's either an attorney or a financial advisor that has some type of legal background. There's, probably a handful of people that we all deal with. Relative cost is going to be about $700 to $800, so not a huge amount of money, but not nominal either. In that separation agreement, we're also going to say how that money is going to be paid for. So when we're paying that person $700 or $800, how is that going to happen? Or parties are going to split that cost. So we're going to give that money to that third party. The third party is going to read the separation agreement, is going to receive a copy of that annuity, and based on that annuity say, okay, this is how we're going to divide it. They're then going to reach out to the provider. So let's say in this example, it is a local union. So they're going to reach out to the local union and say, okay, who's your providers? If Fidelity is whoever, and then they're going to ask them for basically a sample. And then based off of that sample, they're going to draft it up, which is the reason why we're paying this person this money. Long story short, they then have to get approval from the company, and they have to say, yes, it's pre-qualified as a QDRO. Thank you very much. Once we get that pre-approval, then we as the attorneys are going to take a motion into court to approve that QDRO so that the judge can bless that document.
Well, that sounds like a really long process. I mean, and it sounds like it should be a good process, because you have to make sure that the numbers are right and that things are conveyed correctly. How long does it actually take?
It all depends on the company. Again, obviously we're delayed right now because people are 50% at home or whatever the case may be. But in a normal world, again, depends on what the company is. Fidelity, I have to say, is by far the best person. You go to Fidelity, you ask for a QDRO to be approved, and it's pretty much rubber stamped, and it's really, really simple. Where if you go to other companies, they can process it and they can wait and they can, and it's like that whole process. And maybe you get an answer back from them in 6 months. Generally speaking, I would say once it's prepared and you're talking to the right person, and that's the hardest part, is finding out the right person. But once you're talking to that person and getting into that right person, generally the process for them to review it is 2 to 3 months. And then again, once they say that it's qualified, then we submit it to the court. Sometimes they do send it back and say, no, we're not accepting it because of X, Y, and Z. And so you have to go make those changes. And then once we make those changes, again, wait for their pre-approval and then submit it to the court.
What happens after the approval?
So that's pretty much the good part. Once we get the approval, we're filing that motion to approve with the court. We get the court to rubber stamp it. Generally speaking, the parties may have to sign the documentation. But once we get it back from the court, we'll get a certified copy from the court. We then submit it to that provider, that plan administrator that is handling the QDRO. They will then process it. And usually when they start processing it from that point on, it's maybe a month time frame. And then after, they'll send notices to each of the parties, both the payor and the recipient, saying, hey, we've approved this QDRO, this is what's going to happen. And then they'll set up a statement for the recipient.
And now for the fun part. When do you get your money? And are there a lot of taxes on that?
Well, it depends on what kind of account it is and when you're going to really get it. So let's just say, for an example, a 401k or an IRA, those are really easy, because guess what? As soon as you get them, you're either going to roll it over into yours or you're going to liquidate it. There's kind of a no-brainer on those. So again, what do you want to do with it? Do you want to use it for your nest egg because, hey, maybe you're in a profession that doesn't allow you to do that, and now you can start growing your own account and you can keep putting money into that account? So that's one option. Other option, of course, is I want to liquidate it and I want to pay all the taxes on it now, but at least you're not paying taxes twice. So it kind of depends on what you want to do. And then we talk about things like an annuity or pension. Depending on what those say, chances are you're not going to be able to touch those until the participant would be able to touch them. So for example, if your spouse is giving you an annuity or pension and it says spouse husband can't touch it until he reaches 65, and you receive this QDRO and you receive this money, then guess what? You can't touch it until your ex-spouse turns 65. So the same rules are going to apply. So certain things you're not going to be able to touch, but also guess what? You now got that nest egg, whether you wanted it or not, and it's something that you can utilize later on down the road. So there's a couple different options. My suggestion is always going to be, if you have a 401k or an IRA and you're going to want to take it out of whatever location it's in now, talk to a financial advisor, because you're probably going to want to roll it over into an account in your name to get you the best benefits.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, what do most people end up doing?
I think it all depends on where they are financially, and where they are in terms of savers versus non-savers. So that depends on your personality. But generally speaking, what I always recommend is, a lot of times we're fighting for this money. This is not money that's easily just handed over and go, here you go. So from my perspective, unless you really need it right this minute, use it as a retirement. use it as your future earnings for when you need it down the road. Chances are you're at least somewhat stable in your current environment. You don't need that money. You certainly don't need that money with the 15% penalties and interest that you're going to have to pay Uncle Sam. So wait until you're 59 and a half. So again, kind of depends on where you are. But my ultimate solution is, again, talk to that financial advisor, see what they're saying, see what the best benefits are, because all too often people want to liquidate it and they don't understand the ramifications. I have one person that, essentially has went through about $400,000. She thinks that it's her savings account. Well, guess what? You're now 60 and you've got no savings, and you had almost $500,000 that you spent. So, how is that going to be beneficial to you when you probably have 40 more years of life and you have no income?
I know people are living a lot longer than they used to.
That is true. And that's, like I said, that's one of the things is you want to look at, where do you want to be? When do you really need this money?
Is there anything else we should know about QDROs before you go? I mean, this has been incredibly informative.
I think the biggest thing is, know and talk to your attorney about the ramifications before you go into it. You can sign an agreement, especially certain things like a teacher's retirement account, or the firefighters, or police officers. They're going to have different things. They're going to be the DROs, and so you're going to have to do a little bit more research. Talk to a financial advisor who's going to give you that financial advice before you sign it, because in those particular circumstances, you have options. It's not just, hey, you get 50%. It's, hey, you get 50%, but the participant, meaning your ex, is going to have to pick off checkout boxes, A through D. Which one do you want? So you want to be able to negotiate that. So you want to have an intelligent conversation with your attorney, with your financial advisor, to see which one is best for you. It may not be something that your spouse is willing to give up, but that's what the negotiation is all about. So know what you're getting into. And then ultimately, again, know when you can receive that money. Don't go in and with, oh, look, I just got $50,000. Because if you can't touch it, great. It's really kind of useless. So you want to know, you want to understand when you're going to be able to receive those monies. And then I think lastly, you want to talk about if there's any loans on that account, whatever it is, who's going to be responsible for it. So is it going to be the person, that the participant, or is it going to be both of you splitting that loan? How is that going to be paid back? How is that going to be factored in? So I think those are the common pitfalls that people run into, that you really need to know how to handle them. And obviously the time to handle it is always before the divorce.
I couldn't agree with you more. So, well, I want to thank you so much for coming on here today and discussing this very important topic. You're always saving us tons of money with your advice. So I want to tell everybody out there, if you do have any questions about a pending divorce or any other family law matters, absolutely give Attorney Nicole Reeves Lavallee and her staff a call, because they are the experts. They are fantastic at what they do, and they are very reasonable when you feel hot-headed and angry and crazy about whatever might be happening to you. They're fantastic at just telling you like it is and giving you the best strategies to achieve your goals. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. And thanks again, Nicole. We really appreciate you.